Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy healthy start to this nice Friday morning over here, of which a pretty big Friday I do suspect, as we got NFPs, not NFTs, but NFPs, non-farm payrolls, a little bit later today around US market open. So likely a big catalyst around that time. And we have another actually completely new signal to be looking at, as all of our prior signals, I believe, have been more or less resolved, or at least the ones that are like more time relevant, of course. So I wanted to present something that's actually relevant, probably within this next week, maybe even starting today. In fact, probably starting today. And without further ado, let's just jump into it right here. All right, so I wanted to start it off right in over here. We're going to be looking at the advanced stochastic, which has two major components that I want to be focusing on for this analysis. First and foremost is going to be the HVP. So that's essentially volatility of the stochastic momentum. That's represented by this line that my cursor is currently tracing right here. And the second part is obviously the stochastic momentum oscillator, which you're probably familiar with, but it's this guy right here. Or girl, who the fuck knows? It's 2022. But in this case, this signal starts off by identifying first extreme lows, of which these would be some examples of extreme lows right here, where the HVP of stochastic momentum gets, basically below these critical regions and then expands from there. Once the expansion phase happens, which is marked by the HVP actually getting a positive slope, very specific right there, then we look at the direction of the stochastic momentum oscillator to get the direction on the actual move itself. Anyway, I've gone ahead and back tested the last year's worth of data, of which there are 9 iterations. You can see them all right here, and found that the average move from start to finish was about 28, just under 29%, basically, done over the course of just over 10 days. So happens relatively fast once we actually, see it get going. And the stochastic momentum oscillator has gotten the correct direction on that volatility expansion 8 out of the 9 past iterations. So very high hit rate right there, just under 89%, as you can see. Anyways, the reason why I bring this one out right now is because as of the current moment in time, it is downside postured. That is not a signal in and of itself, but it does suggest that the expansion phase from this region, if we start to see it today especially, is likely to be the downside again, as long as Bitcoin is closing on a daily closing basis below that momentum pivot, which is 24,200 right here. Here's the thing though, the HVP of stochastic momentum obviously has not actually begun to expand just yet. It is still angled to the downside right here. So it unlikely is actually to start today, probably Monday at earliest, if I had to guess. Obviously, my opinion is not necessary on that. Like if it starts today, it fucking starts today, right? If you start to see that point up, well, that's a pretty damn good indication that it's going to continue in that direction. But for right now, I do suspect that we probably, this is probably gonna be more relevant early next week. But then again, with a with the NFP, kind of catalyst coming in later today, that could very well do it, actually, come to think of it. So here's the thing. As far as I'm concerned, Bitcoin is typically a lot more likely to break down than break to the upside, as long as Bitcoin is below this region right here. So let's play around with these numbers, looking at the average move of just under 29%, and take that from where Bitcoin is currently trading right here. Actually, sorry, there we go. Let me zoom in a bit. There we go. And if we were to add that to the upside, so let's say Bitcoin does clean above that stochastic momentum pivot and expand to the upside, well, guess where 29% puts you at the top of the last major gap fill coming in from June, breakdown from about $29,000, which I thought was rather interesting. Because it does have good confluence right there. I expect that's also maybe around like the daily 200 or something like that, but I actually haven't checked, just kind of guessing. And if we see that come to the downside, then where would that essentially imply? Or let me actually get this properly. There we go. 28% to the downside. Again, that's an average, so there's going to be some variance there. Would put Bitcoin actually on new lows at about, somewhere around $17,000. Now, going through the data, there has been some good variance on this. On the upper end, we have seen moves as great as like 44%. On the lower end, we've seen moves as less impressive, let's say, as about 17%. So, or sorry, 14.5% right here. Jesus, man, I'm missing all of them right now. 12.5% right here. Even if we went on the lower end for that schedule, let's just say like 15%, kind of take the average of the lower end, 15% to the upside would put Bitcoin basically at that $26,000 to $27,000 number, that I've been speaking about a lot. If Bitcoin does get continuation, which I would now define as closing above that momentum pivot, earliest warning signal, personally speaking, would be 23,500, same as before. And to the downside, that would put Bitcoin basically back down around weekly range lows. Personally speaking, if Bitcoin does break down, that's about where I think it would end up, somewhere around 20,000 bucks. I do not think that we're going to see new lows from here. In fact, I feel very, very strongly about that. I do not think that we'll see new lows exactly from this region. I do think that Bitcoin probably tries a little bit higher sometime before potentially going lower later this year, if that's going to happen at all. So now getting into the lower term time frame, some, I guess, less fun stuff, because I always like talking about statistics. That's what I really want to be basing the majority of my analysis off of. And in case you're wondering how I actually trade, stuff like this basically is kind of how I trade. Obviously, this is not like a plan in and of itself, but you can probably figure it out from there, or make your own perhaps as well. Anyways, let's go into this chart right on over here. This was the chart that we were working off of yesterday. Technically speaking, did Bitcoin close below 22,500 on a full hour on CME? No. Did it on spot price action? It did, but the analysis was for CME, and in this case, did it technically hold? Yes, by a ball sack here, basically, of $40. That's closed at 22,540. Personally speaking, this to me does not look strong right here. That's just my personal opinion, of course, but at the end of the day, my opinion is not necessary. It's kind of the same range as before. I know that that's very uneventful and not very helpful, or I mean, maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not, I don't know, that's for you to decide. But in this case, we do see a very similar setup. Extremely low BBWP on a 4 hour. I believe it's also very low on a 6 hour as well. Indeed it is. Maybe even a 12 hour. It's reaching down there, and it probably does get to extreme lows sometime around midday today. So, can we see a resolution today? Very likely, yes. Resolution in this case would be above 23,500 on a higher time frame closing basis versus 22.5 on a medium term time frame closing basis. So a 4 hour or a daily below 22.7, same levels as yesterday, basically. So within the context of that, do we see any sort of indication of a good bias on direction? I'm looking at RSI divergences right here. I don't see anything right now. It's quite literally right there in the middle. So that's quite unhelpful. If anything, moving averages are a little bit more in a bullish posturing, to be fair. So there is that for the BULAs. But again, really depends upon the actual break if BULAs are going to take over with a closure above 23.5. If we see something like that, then yes, very likely Bitcoin's going to head back up somewhere around that daily stochastic momentum pivot into next week. Very likely continues on from there. Personally speaking, I do think that this one probably breaks down. If we go check out stochastic momentum over here, we will see a couple of interesting things. The 12 hour is downside angle as long as Bitcoin is closing below 23,550. So 23,550 is basically that same pivoted region on the 4 hour time frame. And also of particular interest, or perhaps interest, we do see a nice little trend line coming in from these last few lows. These last few lows from 20th of June, 1st of July, 14th of July, more recently on the 27th of July, and potentially, somewhere right around here as well. That would obviously imply downside beforehand, of course. If we go to the 6 hour, where is the pivot right now? Currently, it's stated up, but the pivot is at 22,900, not so far away from where Bitcoin is currently speaking. And the 4 hour time frame is pivoted at pretty much the same number, 22,950. So I would go as far to say that 22,950 on those timeframes closing bases for CME would be an early warning and indication that we're probably going to see this one break to the downside. And that begs the question, where next? Where next? Well, I suppose the last of the Bula hopium for like the short medium term, if that range were to break, would be the 0.5 Fibonacci retracement right here, which is at 21,960. Why is it why is it a bit of Bula hopium? Simply because that would still be a higher low compared to the last low that we did see on the 27th of July. Again, where that stochastic momentum pivot hit on the 12 hour before. So, it could be through these last few lows over here, which basically is all these prior lows. If Bitcoin were to come down around there and we see the 12 hour turnaround, that would be a really good indication that, well, that's playing out yet again. And we very likely see another move to the upside. So all of these are very preliminary, of course. And then if we go into, what else did I want to get into? We already spoke about the daily pivot. We already spoke about that. And we spoke about the upside. We spoke about the downside. So I've covered all my base. Can't be wrong. That's right. I can't be fucking. At the end of the day, I don't want my analyses to be right or wrong. I want them to be statistically relevant is what I want them to be. So anyone who's coming onto this channel, like, hopefully they actually, understand that. But all good. All good. Actually, so far it's been pretty fucking good, to be fair. I do read the comments. As much as I can, as much as my mental health can allow me to, and it's actually very, very comforting to see that the overwhelming majority of people on this channel get it, which is fucking amazing. I mean, maybe everyone is taking like a stats class or something, but Whether you have or haven't, that's awesome. That's super fucking cool. Anyways, in this case, again, kind of wrapping up my thoughts here from a statistic perspective, you know, as long as Bitcoin's below the daily pivot, I am looking for this breakdown. I think that generally speaking, you basically saw it kind of have the first etchings of a breakdown last night for myself with that lower low on the short-term timeframes. But technically speaking, I do want to see follow through as, you know, as always. Other than that, what else do I want to be speaking about? Instagram, I've been on a posting spree, posting all sorts of crypto related content, trading related content, and some not related content as well, which you may or may not happen to give a fuck about. This exchange over here is having a 15% discount on their trading fees, which you know that I absolutely love because I love discounts on trading fees, especially when trading a lot of fucking contracts. It does actually add up. And then they're also going to be having a trading competition on starting Monday with just the community. So if you do want to sign up for that, then the link is right here, and well, you can have a chance to win. I forget exactly how much, but it's actually a decent pot right there. All right, sweet. That's a good place for me to sign off. I want to be wishing you well. I want to be wishing you the best. Much love. Take care, and see you hopefully soon.